Hello, everyone. Here we are. We're going to get going with Deuteronomy 17, which is the continued sermon of Moses to the Israelites before they go into the promised land. Okay, so here we go. Do not sacrifice to the Lord your God an ox or a sheep that has any defect or flaw in it. Not good enough, okay? For that would be detestable to him. If a man or woman living among you in one of the towns the Lord gives you is found doing evil in the eyes of the Lord your God in violation of his covenant, and contrary to my command has worshipped other gods, bowing down to them or to the sun or the moon or the stars in the sky, and this has been brought to your attention, then you must investigate thoroughly. If it's true and it's been proved that this detestable thing has been done in Israel, take the man or woman who's done this evil deed to your city gate and stone that person to death. On the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, a person is to be put to death. But no one is to be put to death on the testimony of only one witness. The hands of the witnesses must be the first in putting that person to death, and then the hands of all the people. So if you're going to make an accusation against somebody, you better be sure, because if they're convicted, you get to throw the first stone. What a horrible thing. I mean, all of this is horrible, okay? And like I say, I'm so glad that we're not a part of this. This is just terrible. But this is what the Lord is doing to get a holy people. He's, if you hear something like this, if we were living in these days and we heard a rule like this, we would make sure we weren't trying to worship other gods. And that's what God's looking for, people who will obey him. So he's giving them a punishment that will deter them from doing this, just like we use the death penalty to deter people who want to kill other people, okay? Just like when you were a kid, the punishment for certain things you did was supposed to make you scared to do it, okay? And so this is why the Lord is being so harsh. He's saying, if you're going to testify against somebody that is saying, hey, let's go worship false gods, or they're worshiping false gods, you better be prepared to throw that first stone. Okay, and then for the people who are considering worshiping false gods, this punishment is too severe for words. It's the death penalty. And so it's not like the Lord is stoning these people. He's setting up punishments to deter them from sinning against him. Okay, so let's remember that. It's not like, everybody's getting stoned because they want to worship false idols. No, nobody wants to worship false idols because they know the punishment is death, okay, at this point in time. So this is what the Lord is doing. Now for us, straying from the Lord, the penalty is death once again. It's hell. And you know what? If you don't have a healthy fear of hell, get one, okay? People like to mock Christians and say, oh, you're just afraid of hell. Well, you know what? There's a wisdom in that. I mean, that may not be the first and only reason why you came to the Lord. But if it was, I'm not going to condemn you. Hell is something to be feared. And if you don't believe in it, that isn't going to change it if it's real, which it's real. Jesus said it was. So even if you don't believe in it, it doesn't change anything. It's just you not believing in it until you open your eyes and you're there. Now, that would be doubly sad, okay? Better to believe in it and err on the side of following God and obeying what he's asked you to do than to wake up in hell. I mean, that's wisdom, being afraid of hell is wisdom. Because once again, I'm going to say, just because you don't believe it doesn't make any difference at all. It's still there. It's still waiting for you. Doesn't matter if you don't believe in it. Truth feels the same way. Truth doesn't care if you don't believe in it. It marches on anyway, with or without you. So, trying to be your own God, which is called pride of the flesh or lust of the flesh, is an impulse that every human being has. We all want to try to be to be God in our own lives, but it's not wise. There is a God, and he wants to be worshiped first. Okay. If cases come before your courts that are too difficult for you to judge, whether bloodshed or lawsuits or assaults, take them to the place the Lord your God will choose. Go to the Levitical priests and to the judge who's in the office at that time. Inquire of them and they'll give you the verdict. You must act according to the decisions they give you at the place the Lord will choose. Be careful to do everything they instruct you to do. Act according to whatever they teach you and the decisions they give you. Do not turn aside from what they tell you to the right or to the left. Anyone who shows contempt for the judge or for the priest who stands ministering there to the Lord your God is to be put to death. Anyone who shows contempt for the judge or for the priest who stands ministering there before the Lord your God is to be put to death. You must purge the evil from Israel. So people will not be mocking the priests, will they? All the people will hear and be afraid and will not be contemptuous again. So if someone does that, they're going to be made an example out of. So once again, the Lord's not doing it. He's just telling you the punishment. So the wise will heed it and the foolish won't. And that's their choice. God didn't make that choice for them. It's not his desire that everybody gets stoned to death. When you enter the land the Lord your God is giving you and have taken possession of it and settled in it, and you say, let us set a king over us like all the nations around us, be sure to appoint over you a king the Lord your God chooses. He must be from among your fellow Israelites. Don't place a foreigner over you, one who's not an Israelite. The king, moreover, must not acquire great numbers of horses for himself or make the people return to Egypt to get more of them, for the Lord has told you you're not to go back that way again. So for me, that would be, don't go back to doing drugs. He must not take many wives, or his heart will be led astray. He must not accumulate large amounts of gold or silver. When he takes the throne of his kingdom, he's to write for himself on a scroll a copy of this law, taken from that of the Levitical priests. It's to be with him, and he is to read it all the days of his life, so that he may learn to revere the Lord his God and follow carefully all the words of this law and these decrees, and not consider himself better than his fellow Israelites and turn from the law to the right or to the left. Then he and his descendants will reign a long time over his kingdom in Israel. Deuteronomy 18. The Levitical priests, indeed the whole tribe of Levi, are to have no allotment or inheritance with Israel. They shall live on the food offerings presented to the Lord, for that's their inheritance. They shall have no inheritance among their fellow Israelites. The Lord is their inheritance, as he promised them. So if we remember, the people are going to give the tithe, their tithes, to the Levites, and the Levites are going to take a tenth of that and give it to the priests, to Aaron's family. This is the share due the priests from the people who sacrifice a bull or a sheep. And it's calling them Levitical priests, okay? So apparently at this point, even though, I guess serving in the temple, even if you're just packing up and putting stuff away, you're still in the priestly duties, okay? Doing priestly duties. All right, this is the share due the priests from the people who sacrifice a bull or a sheep, the shoulder, the internal organs, and the meat from the head. You're to give them the first fruits of your grain, new wine and olive oil, and the first wool from the shearing of your sheep. This is what the priests get. For the Lord your God has chosen them and their descendants out of all your tribes to stand and minister in the Lord's name always. Even if that's just packing up the temple, they're still ministering. If a Levite moves from one of your towns anywhere in Israel where he's living and comes in all earnestness to the place the Lord will choose, he may minister in the name of the Lord like all his fellow Levites who serve there in the presence of the Lord. He is to share equally in their benefits, even though he has received money from the sale of family possessions. So this is a Levite that is not currently serving. Okay, if he comes to serve and he's earnest, then he gets to come serve and be included. When you enter the land the Lord your God is giving you, don't learn to imitate the detestable ways of the nations there. Let no one be found among you who sacrifices their son or daughter in the fire. Now, it's interesting because we still live among people who sacrifice children. It's amazing, isn't it? And I think I told you this before. I went to the Lord when I first learned that human sacrifice was not obsolete. And this was about 15, 20 years ago. And I went to the Lord almost in tears and I said, Lord, I don't think I can live in a world where they sacrifice other human beings. And the Lord spoke into my heart and said, Autumn, as long as man has been on the earth, he has been sacrificing human beings. Only the devil could think up something like that. I can't even imagine looking at another human being and saying, hey, you would be good for a sacrifice. And we still live amongst it, folks. Hate to break the news to you. It's still going on, okay? So I'm going to read this again. When you enter the land the Lord your God is giving you, don't learn to imitate the detestable ways of the nations there. The detestable ways of the people here in our very country. Let no one be found among you who sacrifices their son or daughter in the fire, who practices divination or sorcery, interprets omens, engages in witchcraft, or casts spells, or who's a medium or spiritist, or who consults the dead. Anyone who does these things is detestable to the Lord. Because of these same detestable practices, the Lord your God will drive out those nations before you. Because of these same detestable practices, the Lord your God will drive out those nations before you. You must be blameless before the Lord your God. And that goes for us today, folks. We can't even have the appearance of evil. Okay? The nations you will dispossess, listen to those who practice sorcery or divination. But as for you, the Lord your God has not permitted you to do so. The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet, like me, meaning Moses speaking, from among you, from your fellow Israelites. You must listen to him. For this is what you asked of the Lord your God at Horeb on the day of the assembly, when you said, quote, let us not hear the voice of the Lord our God, nor see this great fire anymore, or we will die, end quote. The Lord said to me, what they say is good. I will raise up for them a prophet like you, Moses, from among their fellow Israelites, and I will put my words in his mouth. He will tell them everything I command him. I myself will call to account anyone who doesn't listen to my words that the prophet speaks in my name. But a prophet who presumes to speak in my name anything I've not commanded, or a prophet who speaks in the name of other gods, is to be put to death. You may say to yourselves, how can we know when a message has not been spoken by the Lord? If what a prophet proclaims in the name of the Lord doesn't take place or come true, that's a message the Lord has not spoken. That prophet has spoken presumptuously, so don't be alarmed. And we still have that today. We have prophets that prophesy wrongly or say, thus says the Lord, and the Lord didn't say it. We still go through that, okay? So they're just being presumptuous. All right, Deuteronomy 19. When the Lord your God has destroyed the nations whose land he's giving you, and when you've driven them out and settled in their towns and houses, then set aside for yourselves 3 cities in the land the Lord your God is giving you to possess. Determine the distance involved and divide into 3 parts the land the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance. so that a person who kills someone may flee for refuge to one of these cities. This is the rule concerning anyone who kills a person and flees there for safety. Anyone who kills a neighbor unintentionally without malice aforethought. For instance, a man may go into the forest with his neighbor to cut wood, and as he swings his axe to fell a tree, the head may fly off and hit his neighbor and kill him. That man may flee to one of these cities and save his life. Otherwise, the avenger of blood might pursue him in a rage, overtake him if the distance is too great, and kill him even though he's not deserving of death, since he did it to his neighbor without malice aforethought. This is why I command you to set aside for yourselves 3 cities. And we know that the avenger of blood would be a relative, a husband, a father, a brother, somebody who is avenging the blood of the person that was killed, okay? Also, I want to make a mention, it said, don't have anything to do with people who speak to the dead. That is also something that is still done, and we are not to raise the dead, okay? I know it's kind of tempting sometimes, especially if you're missing a loved one. Don't ever do it, okay? Don't ever do it. If someone entices you, hey, let's conjure up your mother and see what she has to say. Don't do it. Say, I rebuke that. No. Okay, learn how to say it, make a gracious no, and say, that doesn't work for me. No, I don't want to do that. As tempting as it may be, and of course, 99% of them are phony about it, but on the off chance that you meet that one person who really can raise the dead, which would have to be someone very steeped in sorcery, so I hope you never meet them. But if they do get into your life surreptitiously, resist the temptation to look at what they're doing, okay? Resist. Always resist. Better to be innocent, to be dumb and innocent. I don't mean intellectually dumb. I mean just like a babe. Just be innocent like a baby. Don't get into that stuff, okay? If the Lord your God enlarges your territory as he promised on oath to your ancestors and gives you the whole land he promised them because you carefully follow all these laws I command you today, to love the Lord your God and to walk always in obedience to him, then you're to set aside 3 more cities. So you set aside 3, and if he enlarges your territory, you set aside 3 more. Do this so that innocent blood will not be shed in your land, which the Lord your God is giving you as your inheritance, and so that you'll not be guilty of bloodshed. But if out of hate someone lies in wait, assaults, and kills a neighbor, and then flees to one of these cities, the killer shall be sent for by the town elders, be brought back from the city, and be handed over to the avenger of blood to die. Show no pity. You must purge from Israel the guilt of shedding innocent blood, so that it may go well with you. Don't move your neighbor's boundary stones set up by your predecessors in the inheritance you receive in the land the Lord your God is giving you to possess. One witness is not enough to convict anyone accused of any crime or offense they may have committed. A matter must be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If a malicious witness takes the stand to accuse someone of a crime, the 2 people involved in the dispute must stand in the presence of the Lord before the priest and the judges who are in office at the time. The judges must make a thorough investigation, and if the witness proves to be a liar, giving false testimony against a fellow Israelite, then do to the false witness as that witness intended to do to the other party. You must purge the evil from among you. The rest of the people will hear of this and be afraid, and never again will such an evil thing be done among you. So it just takes one person to accuse somebody of something and be found a liar, and they'll be put to death, and people won't go around accusing other people. Boy, I wish that was still in practice today. Not particularly being put to death, because that gives me the creeps. But, I wish there was something that would show people, stop accusing each other. Stop making up false testimonies. And I say that because I went through it. And it's just unbelievable when people, and especially when the slander is received. So the Lord is talking about slander here. The rest of the people will hear of this and be afraid, and never again will such an evil thing be done among you. Show no pity. Life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. Now, Jesus came, and in reality, he didn't say, this is obsolete, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. What he said was, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, but I'm saying if you hate your brother, you're already a murderer. So he's really not throwing the law out with throwing the baby out with the bathwater. He's just telling you it goes deeper. He's talking about cleaning up your ugly heart, okay? He's saying, that's great, tooth for a tooth and all this stuff, but I'm telling you, or let's say lusting for a woman, you've been told don't lust after women. I'm telling you, or no, what is it? Okay, I'm getting confused, but you get my point, okay? He's not really saying this stuff is obsolete because we have laws built around this stuff. But he's saying clean up your heart so that you never get there. Because if you have a clean heart, you're not going to be sitting around thinking about harming others. I promise you, you won't. Okay, so let's go to the last one for the night, Deuteronomy 20. When you go to war against your enemies and see horses and chariots and an army greater than yours, don't be afraid of them, because the Lord your God who brought you up out of Egypt will be with you. When you're about to go into battle, the priest shall come forward and address the army. He shall say, hear, Israel, today you're going into battle against your enemies. Don't be faint-hearted or afraid. Don't panic or be terrified by them. For the Lord your God is the one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to give you victory. The officers shall, and this goes for today too, in whatever battles we face. The officers shall say to the army, has anyone built a new house and not yet begun to live in it? Let him go home, or he may die in battle and someone else may begin to live in it. Has anyone planted a vineyard and not begun to enjoy it? Let him go home, or he may die in battle and someone else enjoy it. Has anyone become pledged to a woman and not married her? Let him go home, or he may die in battle and someone else may marry her. Then the officers shall add, is anyone afraid or faint-hearted? Let him go home, so that his fellow soldiers will not become disheartened too. Such great advice. And that goes for the workforce too. You get one lousy person in a workforce and nobody can move ahead. When the officers have finished speaking to the army, they shall appoint commanders over it. When you march up to attack a city, make its people an offer of peace. If they accept and open their gates, all the people in it shall be subject to forced labor and shall work for you. If they refuse to make peace and they engage you in battle, lay siege to that city. When the Lord your God delivers it into your hand, put to the sword all the men in it. So it would behoove them to just open the gates and surrender. At least they'll have work, they'll be fed, they'll be clothed, and things can move on. But if they want to start fighting, that's it, okay? So this is the precedent the Lord is setting. He's saying, when you march up to attack a city, make its people an offer of peace. If they accept and open their gates, all the people in it shall be subject to forced labor. So they'll go into homes and they'll work for the people. And they shall work for you. If they refuse, lay siege to that city. When the Lord your God delivers it into your hand, put to the sword all the men in it. As for the women, the children, the livestock, and everything else in the city, you may take these as plunder for yourselves, and you may use the plunder for the Lord your God. Use the plunder the Lord your God gives you from your enemies. So this is a pretty clear battle strategy. You get rid of the men so that the strength and the force is gone, and then you divide the spoils. Very simple. It's not particularly a strategy. It's just very simple. This is how you are to treat all the cities that are at a distance from you and do not belong to the nations nearby. However, in the cities of the nations the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, don't leave anything alive that breathes. Okay. Completely destroy them, the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. So we know what they were doing. They were sacrificing their children, and God wasn't going to have it anymore. They'd been doing it long enough. As the Lord your God has commanded you, otherwise they'll teach you to follow all the detestable things that they do in worshiping their gods, and you'll sin against the Lord your God. So apparently there's cities that are far away that they're allowed to capture for forced labor, plunder for the women and the livestock. And then there's cities that God really wants destroyed utterly. And those are the ones that were just mentioned. Canaan, Perez, on and so forth. Okay, those are the ones that their sin is too egregious. They are to be taken, and everything that breathes is to be put to death. Even the animals have been spoiled by the sin of the people. When you lay siege to a city for a long time, fighting against it to capture it, don't destroy its trees by putting an axe to them, because you can eat their fruit. Don't cut them down. Are the trees people that you should besiege them? However, you may cut down trees that you know are not fruit trees and use them to build siege works until the city at war with you falls. Okay, so that's it. Now, I want to look this up really quickly. Hold it, bear with me. Wow, I'm really having trouble here. Heard it said, and okay, I want to see what Jesus said here in this. You've heard it said, an eye for an eye. You've heard it said, this is Matthew 5:38. You've heard it said that it was said, eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth, which we just read again. But I tell you, don't resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. Okay, so what I'm getting out of that is that, but I tell you, don't resist an evil person. Okay, resist. He's saying don't pay them back an eye for an eye. Just let them go on and be evil. So in a weird way, this is in a different context. So I'm going to kind of stand with what I said, that Jesus wasn't particularly abolishing the law. He came to fulfill it. And there are penalties for, you shall not murder, for breaking the 10 commandments. And one of the penalties is an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. So Jesus is not abolishing the law. He came to fulfill it by dying for it and paying that price for all of us breaking it. But he's saying that instead of taking their eye, say they take your eye, instead of taking their eye, don't go further. Let me look into this a little more, but what I'm getting here is don't resist an evil person. If they take your eye, let them take the other one too. If they slap your cheek, turn the other cheek. If anyone wants to sue you, hand over your coat as well. So I need to look into that and really pull it apart, because that's interesting. And once again, Jesus is getting to the heart of the matter. Okay, so he's saying, don't you get in there and start, being evil and dealing with them the way they're dealing with you. Okay, I know that I've also spoken about that as, getting out of the way of the sinner, which Psalms will show us. King David's Psalms, there's one where it says, don't get in the way of a sinner. So in other words, just let them do what they do. Just get out of their way, even if you can't physically. I'll look into it a little more, pull it apart, bring it back to you tomorrow. I love you very much. I'll see you tomorrow. We'll pick it up at Deuteronomy chapter 21. And remember, there's only 29 chapters, so we're almost done here. I love you. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.